This is J&K from the Fuck My Work Life podcast.
And you're listening to the Talking Smack podcast with Josh Scar and friends.
Avengers!
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Talking Smack, where we talk superheroes, movies, animation, comics, and so much more. I am your host, Josh Scar, and joining me this week is my little buttercup, Alex. Alex, how you doing?
I am doing fantastic. And by the way, you have the sweetest smile, Josh.
With my eyes so blue.
And you and I can settle down in a house built for two.
Dear little buttercup, I love you.
Everybody, my little...
So for those of you wondering, yes, I am out of state again. I am in Zebulon, North Carolina, as we were recording this. And I had a lot of time to myself, and I thought, I'm going to call Alex my little buttercup, and I'm going to see if we can't make this a bit. And I've explained the joke, so it's even more funny now.
What's even funnier is that's actually the song my mom and I danced to at my wedding.
That was actually part of the reason why I decided to bring it up, is because I remember like that song actually has a pretty good meaning for you. It's not just a cute little like, oh, the Three Amigos.
Yeah, it's so good.
So a little bit of housekeeping stuff before we get going here. Last week I was on Quest Me talking about Andor. I was on with Josh and Justin. Justin? I'm pretty sure it's Justin. Sorry, Justin or Jason, if I'm forgetting your name. I'm pretty sure it's Justin. I don't know why I can never keep Justin's and Jason's straight. It's a good thing we don't have one on the show.
No, not at all.
But we were talking about Andor episode 8, and it was a really good time. And I will have links in the description below for all of this. But I ended up kind of doing what I did over the summer, where I accidentally ended up on like 6 different things all at once.
Nice.
So on Monday, happy late end 7 day as well, everyone. The episode of Tunic about Tunic on the Video Game Club dropped, where Slade and I talked about Tunic. Unfortunately, Tim and Joey were not able to join us, but they wanted to get the episode in, and Slade and I had a really good talk. I think we ended up actually recording for nearly 2 hours. I don't know what, at this point, I don't know what he ended up cutting out, but between talking about Tunic and just shooting the shit, we talked a long time. And then God's be willing, I will actually be meeting Slade in person later this week.
Meeting in person? It's dangerous. You should never meet somebody you only know from the internet, Josh.
Well, I mean, we now summon vehicles, and I said vehicles. That's weird. Vehicles and food and groceries. We have strangers from the internet doing almost all the things we want to have them do now.
Yeah, that we were told what's 20 years ago. Don't you get in a ride? Don't you get in a car with somebody you don't know? Don't take food from strangers.
Exactly. And now again, they're delivering our food for us. And then last bit of housekeeping, I was also on Multiverse of Badness, where we talked about West Coast Avengers number 46, I believe, where it's the debut of the Great Lakes Avengers. And I embarrassed myself because I can't remember my grade school education. And I was unable to name all of the Great Lakes.
Oh, okay. You got to make it up for it. Name them right now.
Michigan, Ontario. Is it Huron? Yeah, it's Huron.
Yeah.
And Erie? Am I missing one?
The Superior? Isn't it Superior?
Superior, yes. Okay. I did better than I did on the show, because afterwards I was like, man, I made a complete ass of myself with that.
And you live close to one.
Yeah, I know Lake Michigan. That's half of Chicago, basically. With that, again, links will be in the description, the episode description. So please check out those episodes, and also just check out all those wonderful podcasts, because they are all awesome. Not just because they're willing to have me on, but because I thoroughly enjoy them with or without me on their shows. And it's just been really fantastic to have the community and be a part of it. So We are going to take our ad break and we're going to hear from Brendan and Matt at Unchefed, and we'll be right back to talk about the Weird Al Yankovic movie.
Hello, everyone. This is Brendan from the Unchefed podcast. Each week on Unchefed, we unpack a topic regarding the politics and history of our plates in the hope of becoming better eaters. That's Unchefed, available now on your preferred podcast network.
And we are back. We are here to talk about the Weird Al Yankovic movie, UHF, because I would rather talk about that.
Oh.
No, we are here to talk about Weird, the Al Yankovic story. And I think Alex is putting on his MMA gloves or something. He's going to get ready to sock me through the internet.
Mm-hmm. This is truly the sequel to UHF that I've been waiting for 23 years. I loved it. It was perfectly absurd.
I enjoyed it for what it was, but to jump the gun, this is going to get a pass from me as far as the Talking Smack rating goes. I thought it was fun, but honestly, I could not tell you maybe more than like 2 lines of dialogue from this movie that I really found funny. And it's not going to be a comedy movie that I think people are going to be quoting and be like, oh man, it's not going to be like the sorry champ, I ate your chocolate covered squirrel from Anchorman.
Or it's not going to be from UHF. You get to drink from the fire hose. I will just say that occasionally. Just to see them look at me like and go, what?
I mean, just to say that it's just because it's not a quotable movie does not mean it's a bad movie. I think it's fine. I think it does what it wants to do really well, but I don't think it does what it needs to do well enough. Ricky and I watched it together, and when we got spoiler alert for Weird, the Al Yankovic story, before we get any further into it, when Ricky and I were watching it, she just completely jumped off board once we got to the Colombian drug lord subplot.
But it was awesome.
The fight sequence and everything was hilarious and amazing. But I can't disagree with her, not because she's my wife, but because it is kind of dumb and it detracts from the biopic story. And she's just like, what the fuck was real and what part of this entire movie is real? And I'm like, I think the only thing so far is that he got his first accordion from a door-to-door salesman and he recorded his first album in the bathroom. Like, that's all I know that's true. Oh, and Dr. Demento. Like, everything else, I have no idea how much of that is like fudged.
See, I loved it because I realized that what it was is that it starts with major kernels of truth. You know, his parents didn't like him, didn't want him didn't want him listening to Dr. Demento. He kind of didn't fit in. The store-to-door salesman accordion thing was real. Fell in with some friends. Those 3 guys that are with him are his band. They've been with him his entire career. He's never like traded out people and stuff like that. They all still work with him. All that is little bits of kernels of truth, which I really like. But I realized that everything was going to be slightly skewed and then was just going to go harder and harder into fantasy land. And I was just sold on it completely. When I was watching it last night, I was watching it with my wife and our best friend. And the second that Madonna gets kidnapped, my friend goes, and there's the Colombian drug lords are coming back. Because it was just like, okay, there's got to be a reason for it. So I was just so invested in the absurdity because it truly is a parody of a biopic, but also just like a parody of himself, like his own self-importance, his own self-grandizement. And that is what is so great about it. Do I think it's very quotable? No. But I loved laughing at the just sheer bizarreness of it. It reminds me of like one of my favorite Michael Keaton movies is called Johnny Dangerously. It's about him. He's like a pet salesman kind of thing, and he's telling this kid to stay off the streets because things went really bad for him and he got in a lot of trouble. and it's basically a parody of The Godfather. And there's not a whole lot of like super quotable lines in there, but the bits that lead up to it and the absurdity that they just keep piling on top of each other is what makes it so good. Which is, I think that's kind of like Weird Al. He's in his 60s now. He's been famous for what, like 45 years, something like that. And I think that this movie is truly a callback to the humor that he is invested in, which is kind of slapsticky, just try to sell it as straight as possible while just things just keep piling up to absurdity levels, kind of like Airplane, Naked Gun, and stuff like that.
See, I think that's part of where the movie started falling flat for me, because they did play it straight for a fair portion of the movie, but there were little things here and there that kind of took me out of it. Because like there's the moment where I there's something that happens with the mom, and she just basically breaks the fourth wall, and it took me out of it very in the very early goings of the movie. And then I love the bit, and I think they did play it really well. The Hey Boy, and I love
Yeah.
that the Hey Boy comes back later. Like I thought that was hilarious.
See, was it the part where the accordion salesman was beat up and she walks back into the room, bonds with Al, Weird Al, and then the guy's like, "I think I have a collapsed lung," and she went, "We're having a moment here." That's
No,
really,
I thought, yeah, I thought that was funny. I like that one. But I think this is me with my expectations,
yeah.
which I usually try not to go into movies with any kind of premeditated expectations. But I was really hoping that this would be better than Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story.
Mm.
For some reason, I know a lot of people really love that movie because it does play on those tropes. And like that one is kind of a quotable movie where like Tim Meadows' character, he's like, Dewey, you don't want this. It's marijuana. It's going to get you high and it's going to make you feel so good.
Is it addictive? No, it's not. Is it expensive? No.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Like that's the one bit from that movie that I thought was that I've always thought was funny. But like everything else about the Dewey Cox movie, just like I never really liked. I liked Jenna Fisher in the movie. I liked Tim
Yeah.
Meadows, and that was kind of it. Everything else in the movie, I did not care for. So I was like, all right, fine. Maybe this will be the Dewey Cox movie for me, and it will make me appreciate the biopic parody a little bit more. It really didn't do that for me.
Yeah, I can kind of see that, because it isn't quote unquote more modern humor where it's just like you can tell there's things that are scripted and things that are not, and it just kind of like flows really, really quickly. This takes a little while to kind of get going because of the slow ramp up with the absurdity, which is the more absurd it got, the more invested I became in it. Because like, but there are like just weird random moments that I just love. Like, he goes out with his friends. He's trying to become super famous, and he's talking about his friends. Like, oh yeah, we're all like doing nothing together. And one of them's like, I think they said his name was Steve. He's like, what did you do today? Oh man, just because I don't have my parents around, I drove backwards on the highway, going with my eyes closed, just waiting to die, waiting to see what would happen. And he's like, that's not good, man.
Yes.
I love that, and I do love the kind of offhand line of like, oh, he's playing one of his first gigs in a bar, and playing where he's playing I Love Rocky Road, and one of the bikers says, oh, I'll need like a double shot of whiskey and some like Rocky Road. We don't sell ice cream. Well, you better before the end of this song.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another cameo. I can't remember the actress's name. I know she was in Glee.
Hmm.
She played the gym teacher. But yeah, she's like, you better start selling ice cream, or there's gonna be 60 dead bikers on your hands.
To me, the when it was really hard parodying the rise of like rock stars, like Dr. Demento takes Weird Al to like this party, and there's every 80s celebrity in the world there.
Yes.
Whereas like, Conan O'Brien
Andy Warhol.
is Andy Warhol, Dimitri Martin is Tiny Tim. You have Emo
There's
Phillips is Salvador Dali. There's Grace Jones. I love that it's like they're not telling you who anyone really is. You just are able to know them because this is their clothing that they were famous for in the 80s. There's Bowie, there's
mhm,
Divine, and then all of a sudden
Gallagher.
Gallagher, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere, this guy's like, "Why don't you play a song?" He's like, "Who are you?" John Deacon. Just utter silence. From Queen, utter silence. I'm the bass player from Queen. Oh. I love that because that is just such like it is a dig at no one knows Queen except Freddie Mercury, but he then puts the song together on the spot, which to me is, having watched Bohemian Rhapsody, is basically what it looks like they do in that entire movie. All of a sudden, Freddie has an idea and they write the entire song in 10 minutes. And out of nowhere, his Weird Al gets his band is drumming away, which okay, cool, that's cool. His band's kind of helping him out with noises. But then Dr. Demento and Bowie and Dolly, they're all like adding instruments to the song.
Yes.
I love that because it is just such a middle finger to the standard biopic.
I can definitely appreciate it, and where it just, again, it falls flat for me is because I don't think it does enough to differentiate itself from like a scary movie kind of parody or any of those like Meet the Spartans and all that sort of stuff. Like I think it's more competently made, but I don't know that the jokes are going to last like those movies didn't last. And that I think Weird Al needed something a little bit more. And also, again, my expectations, not saying that it's the movie's fault. I was hoping for something going beyond just the 80s. Like I'm sounding like I'm gonna contradicting myself because again, I loved the bits, but I don't feel like they landed. In the movie, they say that he wrote Eat It and the riff for Eat It before Michael Jackson ever made Beat It. And I love how they're just like, my 100% original creation that I totally wrote, Eat It. And it's just, the bit plays really well, and it's another one of those nods to the audience of like, we understand that this is not how it happened, but it just eventually doesn't land because they acknowledge that like, oh yeah, Michael Jackson just came out with Beat It, which is a parody of Eat It, and he's aping your video and he's stealing your look. And I would have liked to have seen it kind of play out more like Weird Al versus the music industry. Like you can still do the whole Weird Al as the bad boy, but have him have a rivalry with Michael Jackson, have him have a rivalry with Coolio, which I thought that was a great nod, even though I don't think Coolio would have been at any kind of award show in 1985.
You're talking about Amish Paradise totally came out in 1985.
But like have him have a series of rivalries. Coolio, he and Michael Jackson got along, but like again, it's a parody movie. You can do whatever the hell you want, and then you can also like make Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers be kind of a dick to him as well, and they can have like the music industry versus Weird Al as like your big climax instead of this weird non sequitur. Like we're gonna make Madonna the new Pablo Escobar, and I want to know what Madonna thinks of all that too.
Yeah, that entire section where I did really like the build up. I mean, I like that section, but I think they should have exercised it. They should have it should have just been dropped because I think leading up to that moment where like he gets off, he gets in trouble with his band, he's drinking, and at one point he even says like, "This is the best 6 hours of my life since I met you," and I'm like, what the hell just happened?
Yeah, that was going to be one of my biggest criticisms is they make it seem like Al becomes this. They make fun of the idea that you become a star overnight because they record Another One Rides the Bus, or not Another One Rides the Bus. What was
My
it?
Baloney.
My Baloney. Yes, yeah. They record My Bologna, and he like sends it off to a radio station, and he's literally on his way back into his apartment for mailing it. And like, hey, we just got this on our desk and it's already been playing for 6 hours straight. It's like, it makes no sense, which is the joke. But they're like, oh, you're not going to become famous overnight. And then the movie plays out over the course of like a week.
It's weird.
The editing is really strange, which again is probably the point. And they're making fun of like Bohemian Rhapsody among other movies for their bad editing and storytelling.
Yeah. It would have been, I think, a little more interesting if they had not done. I mean, the Madonna subplot I actually really like because I think that's just fucking funny. I do think it's funny that like that she's basically looking for the Weird Al bump too, because in the universe, anytime he puts out a parody, apparently the artists he parodies, their sales double while his go like quadruple, quintuple platinum and stuff like that. And having her like try to do that was interesting because they needed some kind of love interest angle, because every movie has that love interest angle that is toxic and destructive to them. Like Rocket Man has that, Bohemian Rhapsody, everything does. And the decision to turn it into an action flick, I do enjoy an aspect, because it is funny when he rescues her and he's like, I've never killed anybody in my life, but since Thursday. And it is interesting, like him being this super ripped fighter out of nowhere works for me, especially since he's wearing a camo Hawaiian shirt.
Yes, I love that costuming choice.
Yeah. And I did like that, of course, down on his luck, everything's destroyed him. He goes back to his dad. He works in the factory where they won't tell him what it is that they actually build in that factory. But you hit the wrong button and apparently it shreds somebody alive. But though that 20-minute sequence of him becoming a bad boy, I think should have been massaged in some way of something different. Instead, part of the reason why I loved it, this is a must see for me, is because it reminds me of UHF, and UHF was basically an anthology film taking the framing device of they're trying to rescue a TV station, so these are all the programs they're putting on, and there was a great amusing knockoff of Rambo sequence in there, which is what that part basically played like, which made me laugh because the absurdity of the violence of it all. And I love any kind of movie that does a very affable villain, which Pablo Escobar was a very affable villain.
And I think I understand that this movie was made on a significant budget. I think it's, even without commercials, I think it's something like 85 minutes long. So I understand that you can't do everything, but like paying homage to UHF, not just in a weird non sequitur John Wick Rambo moment, have a scene where Al breaks into movies, kind of like what they do in Elvis, and have him just become an egomaniac and controlling the movie, and he wins an Oscar or something. Like just make it this weird ego massage. And I think that there's good stuff that you can do there. And I know Al had input on the script, and he obviously was trying to get this thing done on a budget, so it makes sense. I think the movie was filmed in less than 3 weeks.
Yep, 18 days.
Yeah. So it makes sense that they can't do all these things, and especially when they're trying to make it quickly and monetarily responsibly, it makes sense that you can't do everything. And they had an idea of what they wanted to do, and I think they did do that, but I think there is something more, and there is something funnier that they could have done.
I agree with that. I mean, I did like how they basically play with time, that it was ludicrous, especially the ending where it turns out he wins an award and immediately is murdered by Madonna, who's now the head of the cartel. And it turns out that this happened in 1985. And I'm like, what? That's the part that threw me off the most, is like, this was, 1985. I'm like, but Amish Paradise was like, and I swear Bad was like 88. What the hell?
Yeah, they're skipping over so much of his career, but they wanted to play off like the Freddie Mercury stuff, where you die young before your star really gets to a crescendo. But that, again, that's another thing where maybe Al could have done something to like pay homage to Kurt Cobain if they had gone into the 90s and just done a few other things that could have been really nice. But also they're doing this on a significant budget. I was watching Seth Meyers last week, just before the movie came out, and Al and Harry Potter, what the hell?
Daniel Radcliffe.
Daniel Radcliffe, I'm sorry. Al and Daniel Radcliffe were on Seth Meyers, and Al was talking about how this movie was made so cheaply that the guy who plays Pee Wee Herman at the pool party, he didn't make enough money for doing that cameo essentially to justify his plane ticket and his hotel for the like day that he shot. But he wanted to be in the movie so badly that he didn't care.
Yeah, I think I read the budget was about $8 million, which that's micro budget for Hollywood. You're
Yeah, and
talking
I
like
wonder how much of that like Al financed as well.
yeah, you're talking about something like that. You're talking about in the budget realm of that movie Smile that just came out, that horror movie Smile. You're talking about basically low budget horror movie money at this point. Comedies these days are like 30 to 50 million dollars, which is kind of absurd when you think about it. But yeah, this is an $8 million movie. I will say though, this has one of my favorite awkward laugh moments because I don't really like awkward humor a whole lot, which is kind of funny because I really like British humor, and British humor can be a little dry, a little awkward. But like, I never really been a fan of The Office. It's just too cringy. But the ending where Dr. Demento and Weird Al make up, and Dr. Demento's like, "Listen, you were right. You know, like I've always been treating you like a son, and I'm not your father, but I've never had a son, and I'd like to be. Would would you let me adopt you?" And he has the adoption papers ready, and then it's just a beat of a moment, and Weird Al goes, "Actually, I just made up with my dad." The earnestness of Rainn Wilson in that moment, and the just perfect response. The beat was just perfect and just sold. I had laughed way too hard.
Yeah, that was a really good moment. Like if it wasn't such a cliche,
Hmm.
I think that could have been one of the few moments where people really remember it. But like
Yeah,
that's a cliched moment because any like college level writing student could do something like that.
yeah.
But it is also an homage to a bygone era, which I was when you brought up like Airplane and Hot Shots and all these The Naked Gun, like all those 80s and 90s comedies, slapstick comedies. I think one of the bits that really fell flat for me was when he's winning his award, or when he's finished with his award acceptance. He steps aside and he starts like praising himself and just basking in the light, and then he wets himself,
I
and
didn't get
it's
that.
yeah, that just felt like something from the 80s, that like, oh, people love wetting their, or audiences always find it funny when people wet themselves, so let's just throw that in just for a good quick laugh, where it fell really flat for me.
Yeah, I didn't like that. I wonder if they threw that in there because A Star Is Born, the Bradley Cooper, Lady Gaga remake from like 5 years ago, because he gets like on stage to accept something like lifetime achievement award or something like that. So kind of basically like, listen, you don't have it anymore. So here's a token award, and he's like wetting himself as he's accepting it, and they like, usher him off stage. I kind of wonder if that was supposed to be like
Hmm.
aping that, but I was just like, I don't know where that moment of like weird humor came from.
Yeah,
It seemed
it's
out of
completely out of
place.
nowhere. Yeah, but again, I'm latching onto a lot of these negatives because it really became part of my viewing experience, again, because of my expectations. I am not blaming the movie for this. It's my fault for the expectations, that it didn't go in a way that I thought it would, and it really just felt like more of an excuse to have a bunch of really fun cameos,
Yeah,
which is a prime example, kind of, not to make a big segue out of this, because we will still talk about this for a few more minutes. It feels like they're maybe trying to cover up some of the cracks in the script and the
yeah,
story by having these cameos, which makes a really strong case against the whole like Marvel fan casting stuff of like, oh, let's get Mephisto, oh, let's get these guys, let's get this person, and just like let the movie do the movie. Don't worry about the cameos, because cameos don't make the movie good. They're just fun little endorphin highs that you can really quickly be like, oh, Conan O'Brien, and he's Andy Warhol. He's being hilarious. Hooray.
no, I can agree with that. Like, to me, it was like realizing like a celebrity was one of those, well, other celebrities was more like, ooh. I was more enjoying that moment of like point out like, who can you recognize from a costume? Like, okay, that's Divine, that's Leslie Grace, that's Warhol, that is that is this person, this person, this person, this David Bowie. You're pointing them all like, oh my gosh, these are all like things from the 80s that like of course they would all be at this party wearing those outfits. That to me was more fun. And then I'd find out later on. But it was cute in the moment. But the thing I remember most from that scene is the John Deacon kind of like rib. And then he goes, we'd love for you to sing Another One Rides the Bus for us. We're going to do Live Aid in like a week. Would you
Yes.
please do that with us? And then the music is swelling. It's like, oh my God, he's going to get his big break. And then the hard pass.
Yes.
Just love that. That is, but yeah, you are right that there's just enough creaks in the script where you can tell that they had a checkbox list of like, we are making a biopic spoof. We have to have the overbearing parents. We have to have the troubled childhood. We have to have the thrown out of the house. And then, we have to have all this. And we had the rise can't be 6-7 years. You're doing it like one of the things I was reading is that Weird Al didn't have, I think, a number one record and or a number one song until 2006's White and Nerdy. That's 20 something years in his career before he kind of like hit the actual like cultural love of like, yes, Amish Paradise and all the stuff on MTV, the Weird Al show that he had on MTV. We are all aware of him, but to actually have you got a number one record and a number one song so deep into his career is something he could have like touched on. But no, of course it is, as you said, he's returning home from recording in a bathroom his single, and it's already on the radio and it's been the most played song of the week. But there's just enough of that, the machinations of trying to shove all that into a script, that it's not a great comedy, but I do like it. And I enjoy that Weird Al tried to give us a fun throwback 80s flick. Could use some touch-ups.
Again, I don't think that it's a bad movie. It's just not one that I think I will go back to, which is
Yeah.
where I think it's a pass. If you're a Weird Al fan, if you appreciate what Al does, and if you can appreciate the parody of it, where, like Alex says, it goes into just a deeper and deeper madness and like further and further away from the truth throughout the movie. So, and that's where Ricky kind of lost touch with it too. She's just like, I knew this was going to be a parody of a biopic, but like, weren't we supposed to still get some things about Al beyond just like his childhood? So, those memes of like, you remember this guy? This is him now. Feel old yet?
Yeah.
So I'm going to do this to you, and you're just going to go, what? And you're going to look at your hands and you're going to just see them fade into dust. Al's friend in the movie, Steve, played by Spencer Treat Clark. You remember him?
Mm-hmm.
That's Lucius from Gladiator. Alex has turned to dust.
Yeah.
I knew he looked familiar, but I couldn't peg him. He was also in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but I've forgotten so much of that show already. Like it was fun to watch, but I didn't remember anything from it. But yeah, that is Lucius from Gladiator.
Oh my God. He's almost our age.
He was born in 1987. He's 2 years younger than me.
Oh my God. I'm so old right now.
Your hand is turning to dust, so we better start wrapping this up.
Oh my God.
So you gave your score as well. You said it is a must see, right?
Yeah.
So we did get our first audience review. I put the call out just before we started recording, and we did get a response, the very first one we've ever gotten from a listener, or at least someone who found the hashtag on Twitter. John Justice at iWearman. He says, I have watched it twice already, the second time with my 13-year-old son, and he was laughing hysterically, which made it even more fun. He was hating Madonna. Loved the fight scenes with the drug gang. So, John, thank you so much. And because you're our first fan review, you get a follow back from us on the Talking Smack account. And hopefully you hear this episode. thanks for commenting. We hope to hear more from you soon, and hopefully your son enjoys the movie and Weird Al music. But it's still a pass for me. I don't mean to sound like I'm latching on to the negatives. I do think there are some really good bits in the movie. I just don't think they're lasting, if that makes sense. And I just don't think they did enough to differentiate themselves from other bygone parody movies that have kind of soured over the years.
I'm old. I feel like I've been shot. Don't no more. I can't take it anymore, Josh. Okay, I can't. I'm getting old. And in other news, Weird Al's been dead for 28 years.
It's like the Avril Lavigne conspiracy where apparently she died shortly after Complicated was released, and now she, for 20 some years, she's been performing, or she's had a clone performing for her, since obviously she's dead and can't perform.
Yeah, what is it? Eminem has also been dead since his overdose in like 2006. And so these last 5 albums have actually been done by a rap bot.
That explains Venom.
Venom, 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 Venom.
My algorithm says this is optimal.
That's a good place to end it. Making fun of people who are actually successful.
As is one's want. So with that, yeah, I guess we will wrap up. Please, again, check out the episode description, because there will be links to my episode of Quest Me, which if you're liking Andor, definitely check out Quest Me and the Twist My Arm Network. Josh and Justin do some good work there, and just some really good dudes. We've also got Multiverse of Badness, which if you like fun comic book stuff, that is a great place to go, because they try to stay away from like the popular mainstream stuff, and they dig a little deeper into more obscure stories and issues that just make for really fun conversation. Like if you need a tease, in the episode that we discussed, again, we talk about the debut of the Great Lakes Avengers, and there's this really weird side story where US Agent is just a giant incel at Tigra, just because she's hunting a mouse within the Avengers mansion. And there's an interesting discussion that happens with that. So check that out. And then, of course, Slade and I talk about Tunic with the Video Game Club. It's just the two of us, he and I. That's improper grammar, by the way. That should be me and him. But I'm trying to homage a song, which, again, I'm explaining the joke. Therefore, it's even more funny.
It's always funny when you explain it.
Exactly.
Which, by the way, Teen Titans Go has ruined Slade for me, because anytime you say Slade, all I can hear is him going, Slade, Slade.
I'll tell him you said that.
Thank you.
So yeah, I will have episode links in the episode description for this episode. You can follow me at Josh_Scar on Twitter. You can follow the podcast at Talking Smack Pod. You can email us at tsmackpod@gmail.com. Thank you to Leo Allen for our musical themes. Thank you to Beppo and Retro Ale Studio for our avatars. Please subscribe, like, rate, review on your podcatcher of choice. And Alex, who is doing our theme music for the week?
World-renowned fugitive, never caught for the murder of Weird Al, Madonna Ciccone, has done our remix music.
Oh, we didn't even get to the fact that there's a post-credits scene too.
Yep, nice Carrie spoof.
And that will do it for us, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. Next week, we will be back with the Black Panther review. I'm very excited for that one. That one will probably go longer than this episode. I think that kind of goes without saying. So I said it anyway, and we're going to get out of here. Everyone, have a great week. Hopefully you voted. Have a great Veterans Day, and take care.
And watch UHF.